Welcome to Melt University's 2020 summer program. This year, our virtual intern program will help you build your brand, inform you on a variety of career paths, and introduce you to top executives in sports and marketing. Here's your host, President and CEO of Melt, one of the largest independent sports and event marketing agencies in the country, Vince Thompson.
Welcome, students. Summer 2020 Virtual Melt University rolls on. Great series of podcasts, great lunch and learns, tremendous feedback, tremendous participation. Keep the great cards and letters and postings coming. And today, I'm so excited about our podcast. Not only is she one of my dearest friends, one of my greatest guardian angels, but one of the most successful corporate executives in America, one of the most successful corporate marketing executives and advisors, and to many, many people we'll talk about today, but also with just a kind soul, has always been one of my guardian angels at the Coca-Cola company while she was there, and we were working together. And as we talk about, you always got to have the value of mentors, the value of relationships, the value of cultivating those relationships, making it reciprocal. RE is the first two letters of reciprocal in relationships, and looking out for one another. So it may take me a day or two to get through Katie's bio, but I'm going to consolidate it down because it's so amazing and so great. Strategic business advisor, blends marketing ingenuity with business transformation experience to help clients thrive in a global marketplace. She's the founder of Bayne Advisors, a strategic consulting and advising firm, and a digital pioneer. Right now, she is a senior advisor for a giant global investment and advisory firm, Guggenheim Partners. Look Guggenheim Partners up with nearly $300 billion in assets under management. She and I have been together for 20 years. I've known her husband for 30. We're like family. She's a double Dookie, graduated from Duke University with undergrad and her MBA, and was a very long time, a hugely successful executive at the Coca-Cola company. Various roles included Chief Marketing Officer of North America. We've talked a lot about Coca-Cola. We talk about the vastness of it, Katie. We'll talk about the history of Coca-Cola a little bit in here. Then she was the president of North American brands. Under her leadership, won multiple Lions, Pencils, Effies, Clios, and an Emmy, re-energizing legacy brands and building new ones. Also was a senior leader in the McDonald's group within Coke. As you know, McDonald's is a gigantic account for the Coca-Cola company, was very involved in that, was senior VP of integrated marketing. We did a lot of great things together in the sports and the music, president of U.S. Sparkling, president of North America, and then senior vice president of global and global marketing, which was huge. So she's worked all around the world with other major Fortune 500 companies, including Beazer Homes and Taylor, the Honest Company with Jessica Alba. It's not an accident that she had this amazing career at the Coca-Cola company. It's not an accident that all these amazing organizations and people want to make her a part of this. And so as you continue to build your network, you continue to build your relationship, you continue to follow her on LinkedIn, Katie is going to be a very valuable resource and connection and mentor. So Katie Bayne, we welcome you to Melt University. Thank you for being on today.
Thanks, Vince. I'm so happy to be a part of this. I look forward to this each summer. I know this is the first time we've done it this way, but I am so full of admiration for Melt and the resources that you put towards this program and really paying it forward to students. So thank you for letting me be a very small part of that effort.
Well, we decided to make some lemonades out of lemon this summer, and we've talked to the kids, and we said, hey, look, we had 40 kids in, but we're not going to give up. We're going to take this program virtual. We've got amazing kids participating. You'll see the feedback. You'll hear and feel the feedback. So there's really been some great silver linings and some great kids. But let's talk. Some of the headlines that we're talking to our kids about this summer is obviously we're all in a pandemic. Obviously, life has thrown all of us a great curveball. But before we get into all of that, when you went to Duke University, and we talk a lot to our kids about a couple things. One, we talk about pursue your passion with a great amount of zeal. And while they're on the college campus, they're going to be surrounded by the greatest professional lab and greatest professional opportunities that they will be their entire life. So, talk about how your early passion was formed during your period at Duke, which is obviously one of the great universities in America.
Sure. Thank you, Vince. And I loved my time at Duke and my time at college, and I think most of the attendees on the podcast are current or are students getting ready to
Mm-hmm.
make their way into the professional world. But I actually completely changed what I wanted to do at Duke. I went
Mm-hmm.
to Duke, and I went in actually pre-med, and Duke's a great place to go. They have a
Sure.
fantastic medical school. But I remember making a call to my dad as I had completed a semester in the pre-med program, and
Mm-hmm.
I came up on my second semester, which involved something called organic chemistry.
Right.
I
Right.
absolutely hated it. And I
Mm-hmm.
called my father, and I had the good fortune to take one psychology class. And through my introductory year and as a freshman, and I said, Dad, you know what? I'm not going to be a pre-med major. And he said, Oh, really? And I said,
Wow.
he said, Well, what are you going to do then? And I said, I think I'm going to be a psych econ major. And he said, And darling girl, what do you think you're going to do with that? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the college period is the best time to really try things out and learn what you love. I went on to further that, Vinny. I knew from the time I was spending in psych and econ, there was something in the middle there. And
Mm-hmm.
when I went home for summers, I started calling people. At that point in time thought that advertising was something so interesting and something that I didn't really understand, but I thought might be something that I wanted to do. And so in the summers, I went in and I worked for a very small firm for all 3 years of college. It was local, little Salt Lake City firm. And
Mm-hmm.
I learned what it was like to work at an agency, and I learned what it was like to be on the other side of the table, which was the client, who at that point in time, I had really interesting accounts like the Utah Ballet and
Mm-hmm.
the Government Safety Commission for wearing seatbelts at the time. But what I learned was what they did and how they worked. And it helped me decide that I wanted to be one of those people. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to be a brand manager. And so it shaped the kinds of companies that I was going to go to work for in the future and helped me determine that I needed to go to business school. So Duke started it, but it started with a huge 180 turn on what I was going there to do and what I ended up deciding I loved.
Well, we and we get a lot of questions from our kids that they say, is it okay to make that change? Is it okay to make that pivot? How do I address this with my parents? Because you go to say school with one set of expectations. You get there, and sometimes you may not necessarily find out what you like, but you may find out what you don't like. And in that case, you knew immediately. You're like, hey, I don't know if this medical school path is going to be for me, but I have sort of found something within psychology and econ about consumer behavior and how it shapes and forms and all that. So I think it's important to tell our kids, and we don't want the parents to throw a sling in arrows, but it's okay to tell kids to sort of, as their first pass of independence and liberty and freedom on these campuses, is sort of okay to pursue yourself a little bit. Wouldn't you say that?
Absolutely. I would use especially freshman year to try a few things on, and
Mm-hmm.
determine it. But then I think the point when I decided to make that change, it was where I was studying, but I used my summers too. And, and go
Mm-hmm.
and then, okay, so I'm thinking this, I'm going to go and see what this looks like. And if you, as I was at that ad agency, I decided I didn't want to work for an ad agency either, which so
Hmm.
it's kind of funny. I went into these places, but then I learned exactly what I wanted to do and what I love
Hmm.
to do. And so by doing that and not being unafraid about the discomfort you might feel, but doing something about it.
So you get your MBA from Duke, which was amazing, and then tell me, and I don't even think I know this, but you let's talk about your career climb within the Coca-Cola company. Did you start in Los Angeles on the entertainment marketing side? Were you at the Olympics in Australia? Where did the climb start?
Sure. Yeah, I began in Atlanta,
In
Georgia, at
Atlanta. Okay.
headquarters, which is where headquarters is for Coke. And through the business school process, I looked at a number of companies, including Procter and Gamble, including Disney at the time, including Pepsi, if you can believe it,
Oh yeah.
Unilever, which is a large consumer price. I knew there were three things I wanted, and I think it's really important as young people figure out where they want to work. I knew I wanted three things. I wanted a company first and foremost with a vision and mission that I believed in, that I could get up and be happy about going to work and understanding the work they did. Second, I, as you know, have a family that comes from a strong international background, and I wanted the opportunity to be able to work around the world.
Hmm.
And so all of those companies I just mentioned really offered both of those. And then the third thing was I wanted a company that had what I felt I really wanted to do, which was the area of marketing and strategy. Brand management is what it was called then. Now it's evolved into sort of strategic marketing and experiential marketing at its core. And so when I looked through that list of companies, the one that really rung true against my filters was the Coca-Cola Company. And I was lucky enough to be offered a position and as a brand assistant. And I showed up for work in a suit with one of those weird tie things women used to wear, and
Right.
hose and heels. And I got my first business card. And I remember the first day I walked through those doors and how excited I was to be working there. So that's how I landed at Coke in Atlanta. We moved six times in my career, six different geographies, locations, everything from Los Angeles, then back to Atlanta, then to Australia, and spent 4 years there, then back to Atlanta, and then two jobs where I was on planes either to Chicago and all over the country and with McDonald's, and then our North America job, and then all over the world. And so, but I do think that, figuring out those filters for where you want to work and then being flexible again, and finding the path through work that's meaningful and keeps you motivated and happy.
Well, there's several things in here that that we're going to unpack, but the first thing that I want to unpack, and we hit on a couple of things, is that you wanted to find a company that had a value system consistent with yours. And we talk to our kids and our students a lot about this. Is that and now in the old days, I say I had to go to the library to get an encyclopedia or a resource guide or the yellow pages, but the information is at their fingertips, and it's going to be it's still a challenge, but there's access to information that will allow you to find companies that are consistent with your value system. Talk about the importance of that, because if you go to work for a company that's not consistent with your values, the outcome is probably not going to be a positive outcome. Correct?
Absolutely. And, I think that's why I always mention it first.
Hmm.
And what that takes to understand, and I think you just hit on it, Benny, is that there's a lot of information about companies' purposes these days,
Hmm.
or organizations' purposes and what they do, and what they intend to do. And then there's a lot of information too on the types of leaders that are running those businesses. And the two are you have to look at both, because the purpose of the company is what's going to keep you there a long time, as long as it's true to the company and is evident in their business around the world. The people are who you're going to work with. And so doing the time to do the research and understanding who those key leaders are at the top of the business, and even the people who are going to be your immediate colleagues and bosses, and
Mhm.
understanding that they also have a value system that works for you is critical. I'm lucky enough now in my new life, as an advisor to a lot of CEOs. That's exactly how I pick my businesses. Businesses that are important and transforming, and honestly have a CEO or an executive team that I believe in, understand, admire, and respect.
Yeah, and we talk about that because we're counseling the kids. In the old days, we would call them mood boards or vision boards, but you can do it in different formats now, digital, social, or whatever. But if you were making, and you just laid it out, I think the filters: purpose, intent, leaders, transformational belief. Those are, to our listeners. Not only do you want to have these pretty images of destinations of where you want to be or what you want to be, but begin to filter out these key words because they actually mean a lot, and they obviously daily is what we're all going through right now. Purpose, intent, belief, transformational. And as you're doing your research on these leaders, you have access to the information to truly understand who they are and what they're about. And Katie, we talk a lot too anyway, that if they're going to call on Katie Bayne through LinkedIn, or they're going to write you a note or something like that, uh, they need to know who they're dealing with. They need to know their target. And so, and I'm going to hold that because I'm going to come back to in that in a minute. But one thing I want to unpack is that you say you moved 6 different times, and then by count, I know you had, as you climbed through the organization, 10 to 15 to 20 different roles. And so, what that is telling me is that you were always willing to take that risk. You were always willing to try to get to that next rung, and you were always willing to accept dang near any assignment that your bosses would throw to you because you continued that climb. And so one thing we're telling the kids is, hey, take that shot. Don't be afraid to take that risk, because our definition of failure is only the failure to try. So talk about, because if you look at your climb, which is an amazing climb, amazing career at the Coca-Cola Company, most vaunted brand in the world, those are the types of things that always stuck out to me about your willingness to always to accept bigger and more risk and responsibilities, because with more responsibility goes more risk.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Sure, and you're right, Vince. At Coca-Cola, I had over 16 jobs in
Mm-hmm.
in the 28 years I was there, which is a lot. But how that all came about, there was no set career path, and I think that's something, especially for a younger person. I think the awareness you can build of what I call it is, it's just like any brand, your intrinsics and your extrinsics values that
Mm-hmm.
you believe are yours today and what you want to be. I know exactly what mine are. And at those junctures when I could see there was an opportunity, I always waited on the brand that I was building as Katie Bayne and what the company needed too.
Mm-hmm.
And where those things, I said, wow, this is the brand I've built. I've done this. I was pretty good at that. This I haven't done at all, and it was, for instance, when I left marketing and went in general management side.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
had to take not just a horizontal, I think I went backwards when I
Mm-hmm.
moved around the world to our Coca-Cola South Pacific office in Sydney. I actually was a complete beginner because I wasn't in marketing and strategy anymore. I was in the world of making customer calls on behalf of the company with our bottlers every day in front of the leaders of our largest, convenience store franchise
Mm-hmm.
or grocery stores. People, I honestly had to step back, but it was an area I knew I needed to learn in
Mm-hmm.
order to be a better strategy and marketing person. I needed to spend those years relearning. And so it is that combination of what do I need to build in skills and experience and also maturity, and what the company needed. The company at that time in our Australia business didn't have a lot of traditional brand-led marketers. So my work in my past was something of value to them. And so it was always a synergistic decision that it was going to be good for the business I was going to work with, but it would give me something new to learn. And if you could every day, that's what keeps you going for a long, long time, I believe, is that you know you're doing important work to contribute to the mission and results of the enterprise, but you're not just doing the same thing. There were some jobs, Vince, where and you and I worked together for a long time. When I was
Mm-hmm.
when I was head of integrated marketing, I absolutely loved those jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And when the chairman of the company came to me and said, "You're doing an amazing job. We want you to look at the challenge," it was almost like, "Oh no, I really love this." But I always looked at it as what could I learn new and what could I do to really help the company or now the companies I'm working with.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'm hearing out of what you said is that you were willing to be allowed to push yourself out of your comfort zone, because you could have
Mhm.
stayed in this nice wave and this nice wake of all those jobs, but two things that stick out: you were willing to push yourself out of that comfort zone because you had a desire and a quest to always be learning. And
Yeah,
we tell these kids this: it's like, hey, sometimes take on some things that are out of your comfort zone. Some always learn, and it, because if you can make yourself invaluable to an organization, you will never have a risk or jeopardy of your job, short of this, of this pandemic we're going through. But talk about that a little bit. Be willing to be pushed out of your comfort zone, and you just hit on a big thing. Is like you're going to get out of college and you're going to go, whoo! I think I'm done learning now, and it's really just the beginning of the process, right?
absolutely. You remember, I think it was when we were first getting to know each other, I was
Mm-hmm.
actually running our McDonald's business for Coca-Cola, and I was having a great time. We were doing things like introducing smoothies and orange juice and water, things that McDonald's didn't sell before, and broadening
Mm-hmm.
the whole way that they offered, more solutions to their customers. And so
Mm-hmm.
we were making them happy. And I had a call. I had an opportunity. Someone who was watching my work on McDonald's identified, "Boy, do you think you could as an extra project?" It wasn't my job. He
Mm-hmm.
said, "Could you take a look? I've got this idea about what could do beyond what we're doing now and build value beyond, what we call the bottle. And because of the strength of our brands, the strength of our partnerships, these fantastic sports partnerships and entertainment partnerships, how could we make that more?" And
Mm-hmm.
I took on, and it was like extra credit work, and I got 40 people together from across the company. Not a single one worked for me. I was a very junior player in the whole company, and
Mm-hmm.
I put together a project where we started to explore. There were technical people on the team. There were people from all of the big markets of the world. There were marketers on the team. And we really talked about, and there were a lot of people from my past. I had worked a lot in our sports and entertainment partnerships. And I knew a lot of the partners outside. And we developed a number of things we could have done. Some of them failed, Vince. You'll remember something called vendotainment. I can tell you what a disaster
Oh
that
yeah.
was.
Oh yeah.
But out of it came the birth of My Coke Rewards, which became the largest digital loyalty program in the world and
Mm-hmm.
was actually a tremendous asset for building not just partnerships, but creating value and loyalty in our consumers, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually changing the way we introduced our younger brands like Powerade and or vitamin water brands to our loyalists of other brands. So anyway, out of those, it's a long story, but when you're in a job and you're feeling comfortable, grab the opportunity for great opportunities to have new ideas about the business
Mm-hmm.
and bring in and people who are passionate about that kind of learning experience too. And like I said, 4 out of the 5 failed of the ideas we put together, but we hit it with one, and that became a program that ran for us 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, it was a massive. But the key point, and we're going to segue into into obstacles in just a second. But to your point, is that failure is only the failure to try. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
get knocked off the saddle, and then out of those, if you can get people ask me what I do for a living. I say I'm in the rejection business. I get told 99 times out of 100, and I always want to learn why I got told no out of those 99, so I can get that yes at 100. But if you can gain um, knowledge and experience and learnings from anything that you try, that's okay as well. And so
Mm-hmm.
we tell our kids, it's like, hey, everybody's putting so much pressure on us. Society puts pressure on us. Our parents put pressure on us. Our colleagues put pressure on us. Our peers, social media, and all that. Ignore that pressure. Stay focused, and you're going to emerge on top. And so, you talked about an obstacle that became one of the greatest market programs in history, but through your rise, talk about a couple of major obstacles that you've encountered. You and I have been through several of them together before. How you got thrown off that saddle, and what you did to overcome that. Because the thing that I'm talking to our students about right now is that it's going to be a brand new world post COVID.
Mm-hmm.
The job market is going to be more intense. You're going to have people that will be willing to take lesser jobs for lesser money that are going to depress the entry level job market. And so we'll segue into what stands out in a minute, but it's going to take a great deal of perseverance in this job market for our students. And I want you to talk about the obstacles and how you overcome.
Absolutely. I think, and I'll give you a specific example, but um, I think no matter where you are, the pace of change today, and even more so with COVID, businesses, all of the work I do with companies now and clients for Guggenheim is about transforming. The basic way that we are living, the way that we are getting the things we need to be happy and healthy are it's fundamentally changing. And it's changing. It was changing before. It was just okay to change more slowly. Now everyone needs to change quickly. So the one thing I can say about um, overcoming obstacles and learning, which the two go hand in hand, as you just said, Benny, is number one, sticking your head up out of your job and learning and listening to what's going on, using this time while we're at home. We're so lucky to have computers and the
That's
freedom of
amazing.
exchange that podcasts can give you, that there's so much information for you to sift through that honestly you just kind of didn't before. You've got more
Mm-hmm.
time. So learn and ideate about what you think you could add to, if you're thinking about a company as you see their business. What when you go into an interview or when you have a job, how are you thinking differently about next year based on what you're seeing outside? Then if you have an idea of what you should do, I've really learned that you can run into something, you miss it. So first of all, you need to get the right people talking to you. But if you have a new idea, and the one I'm going to give you is Arctic Home, and the work we
Mm-hmm.
did with the World Wildlife Federation, probably the biggest program in the last. It was the first time we've ever taken the red Coke can, changed its color, and we created a program which was all about the environment and Coca-Cola's
Mm-hmm.
long-term commitment to the environment, and it was about the polar bears. And if you remember, Vince, we went into that program and we did a huge partnership we've always had with World Wildlife Fund. We had this amazing idea to, over Christmas holidays, over the winter, change the red cans to white as a
Yeah.
symbol. We had polar bears being tracked all over the Arctic. You could, just by buying a Coke, be a part of that world. We were, for every Coke bought, raising money, and we had such a tremendous response to that. Well,
Mm-hmm.
about 3 weeks into the program, our sales forecast for December were out of this world. In November, we were already so far ahead. And I did two things. I personally was the creator of that program with a very large team in all of North America and across our ballers. And I was out one weekend and I went to two things. I went to a neighborhood party. It was the fall. It was
Hmm.
Thanksgiving-ish time, and I went to a party in our neighborhood, and there were some coolers of Cokes there. You know, everyone had pulled out, and we were just standing around. There was people were watching games, and there were some coolers, and I watched people open the Coke coolers, and we had our white cans in there. Open it, look for their brand, and shut it. And then I got the chance to go to a football game, actually, in the old Falcons game. And
Hmm.
I was lucky enough to be again in a box, and I watched again people open that fridge door, look for a Coke, and couldn't find it. And
Right.
I suddenly realized we had potentially made a huge mistake. We were going into our number one selling season when friends and families gather,
Holiday, Coke, Santa Claus, polar bears, all that.
and we had made our 12-pack wraps were red. They were easy to find in store, but the
Hmm.
cans, when they were broken up the way that people do and put them in the fridge or in the cooler, people couldn't find the brand they love. And this brand is about an immediate impulse decision that I want a Coke now. And I had to pick up that phone and call two people. I was CMO at the time. I had to call Sandy Douglas, who was president of North America, and Muhtar Kent, who had just had the most positive 48-hour PR run that he had ever had. And I had to call them at home. And I had a sinking feeling in my chest. And I just said, I think we have a problem. Now, we changed within a week to red cans, but I did in 24 hours. I already knew we had contingency planned for other things. We had red cans ready to go with the bears on them. And
Hmm.
I was able to make calls, and they said, I said, I think we have made a mistake. I think we need to roll now to red during this lead up to Christmas. They said, if you think we should do that, you're making the call. I had to call all of our manufacturers. We have warehouses of cans
Wow.
ready to roll, and I had to make that decision. I called every bottler personally, told them that we were ready to roll into red, and we did it within 24 hours. But the lesson here was, even in the biggest obstacles, that was an idea no one had done. Everyone got excited. The receptivity was great. Customers loved it. I had made a mistake in understanding the details of the program and how people really interact with each other with our brand. But I had done the contingency planning. We had a plan B. So my message is, think big, always contingency plan, and then have the self-awareness and business awareness to say you've made a mistake and then make the change. We actually sold more. We had better business in that quarter than we've ever had in the holiday season. The press response was unbelievable. They loved the second wave of cans. It it all ended up okay, but only because we had a contingency plan, and I had the support of my senior leaders to say, okay, go ahead,
Hmm.
launch your contingency plan. So
Well, what you're also saying is that you were willing to accept the responsibility of that strategic decision. We won't call it a mistake, and then you were willing to accept the responsibility to go to Plan B. And so many times we all sometimes are not willing to accept responsibility or blame. But I find it very easy when you say, you know what, I made a mistake here. I got my knees skinned. We got to move forward. And so, so that's a huge takeaway for our students and our listeners,
yeah,
is that be willing to accept that and pivot off of that, and don't look back once you do that,
yep,
because
and do the work to fix it. It's
and
like
then do the work to
I
fix
could
it.
have run away or not told anyone what I was thinking, but I had that about once every 5 years. I had one of those feelings about something I was usually in the middle of. And
Hmm.
my dad once told me, I called him the first time it happened, which was way back when I was in Los Angeles doing entertainment marketing for Coke. I had that's the first time. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he said, well, what have you done about it? And I said, well, I called Atlanta, and we're getting the protections that we need for the company, but I'm really worried. I had put our brands in an Oliver Stone movie called Natural Born Killers, which
Yep.
nobody knew what the script was. And Oliver Stone was a huge partner. And then suddenly there were Arcans in the middle of that scene in the hospital.
Yep. Yep.
And I had that feeling. I walked out of a screening and I called the company first and got the protect. And then I called my dad, and he said, have you done everything you need to do to fix this? And I said, I've done everything I think I can do. And I have a whole team of people now helping us fix it. And he said, well, then you've done everything you had. And he said, by the way, if you don't feel that feeling once every 5 years, you're
Mhm.
not pushing it hard enough. And so it gave me great freedom to explore those ideas. But I learned the value of having an excellent contingency plan. And
Mhm.
then, Vinny, recognizing that sick feeling in the bottom of my stomach when
Right.
I realized we got to move now. So,
Well, and you brought up several things that I want to unpack here, but one thing is you refer to your dad, and I remember, by the way, I think you and I had some big colossal whiff, and you said, we're going to make these about every 5 years, and it's not necessary you have the whiff; it's how you respond to the whiff. But you talk about your experience at Duke, you talk about your experience within Coca-Cola. We know they have a very great, valuable mentor system. We know that your dad has been a great mentor to you, but I'm encouraging our students to seek out mentors, whether they're on their campus, they're professors, I talk to a lot of kids through the intern program. They don't necessarily have to be an older mentor. You can have them across the board, but talk about the value. It's the value of the mentoring that you've been given, that you give, and the value of maintaining these relationships because at the speed, my old man says the world turns into 24/7. Now I say, yeah, it's 24 minutes and 7 seconds. I mean, it's like the speed of light. And we're seeing these examples every day. But I want you to talk about the value of mentors, the value of maintaining those relationships, and the value of maintaining relationships, and treat it like a beautiful plant or a flower.
absolutely. Vince, without a lot of people, especially when you're starting out, there's no formal mentor program. You
Mm-hmm.
almost in college, you look for, okay, how do I sign up for a mentorship 101, and how is this called? Honestly, this is again where I think, for me, I have always had a series of about 3 or 4 people, usually one in the business I'm in, that I
Mm-hmm.
reach out to, and just say, I admire your work. For instance, at Coca-Cola, I had one that was one of the first women I saw who
Mm-hmm.
was very successful at Coca-Cola. She was very shy. I wanted to learn more about her. And I went to her office and asked if we could just have lunch once a quarter and just catch up. And she was surprised. She absolutely said yes. I had also men at Coca-Cola who were mentors, but I built 3 or 4 people where I
Mm-hmm.
spent time and built a relationship outside of my work, and then 2 outside the business always. I still have those, Vince. And any big decision I make about
Mm-hmm.
myself or even about a piece of work, as long as it's not too confidential. And if it is, I
Sure.
describe it in a way that I can't hurt my companies. I can pick up the phone. I will get either a text message back, or a call, and I can book a time with any of these 4 at any time. I treat them as
Mm-hmm.
my board of directors. They are invested in me. They want me to be happy. They know what I'm good at. I know what they've done. I have huge respect for their opinions. And I always make time based off of their schedule. And I am thankful for their input. And then I report
Mm-hmm.
back to them what's going on.
Well, I love having your own personal board of directors. That's great, and I want to include that in my book and these other discussions because to our students, like, form your own personal board of directors, but start doing it now. When I was at Auburn, one of mine would have been the sports information director. He gave me that first shot. One of my journalism professors, and so you can form your own personal board of director, and and ask for honest, constructive feedback. Because Katie, what I tell the kids is that it's okay to get constructive feedback. You want to hear the truth. You don't want to be. You don't want to have a mentor that's just a cheerleader, and then take that advice and build and learn from it. Don't take it, don't take it personal. If there's one thing I could teach these kids is don't take any of this process personal.
Yep.
As you're continuing to build your brand and build, the title of our book is Building Brand
Yep.
You. Talk about, and we're seeing this every day, but a couple things. we call it the grandma test or grandma rule. Don't post anything on your social media outlet that you wouldn't pass muster with your grandmother, because one thing that future employees are going to do now more than ever, if they're investing a lot of time, energy, and money and resources, they're going to scrub your social media. They're going to scrub your social images down. And so, talk about the importance, because we're talking to our kids like, you got to see yourself as a brand right now.
Mm-hmm.
So while you're 20 years old, 21, 22, 19, you have a very fresh set of wet cement to build this imprimatur. But talk about the importance of right now the social images as they're beginning the process of building brand new.
Yeah, I think it's critically important. And Vince, I know as you hire so many young people, it's the first step people take as they looked at your social presence.
Mm-hmm.
Does it all match up? You can have a terrific resume that comes in, that's written with you with help from your resume writing class at college. Unless I can go and look at your LinkedIn and it matches, and look at your, if you have it, Instagram, Facebook, anything you have out there, does it match up with what I see on this resume? Or is the resume artificial? Is it fiction? And so I think the importance of understanding that every contribution you put out there should be against the brand you that you set up. Those intrinsics, which are the things you're good at, whether I'm good at analytics, I got a lot of strategic experience here, and your extrinsics, that I'm a positive person, that I am a collaborator, and I can see that. It's not necessary in every piece, but unless those pieces match up, and are updated. And don't worry that your LinkedIn now and your resume now are old. They're dynamic pieces of information.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do the homework to continue it, and keep those things representing the brand you want to be now and in the next, not 10 years, but you have to be focused on the next 2 to 3 years, and making sure that that profile you're building across all these platforms is you. And then when you follow up with an email or a letter or whatever you're doing, or an application through a company website, it matches up. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it before where they don't match, and those people don't make it through to being considered. So that's homework about brand you that you have to do. And you do it constantly, even when you get a job, so.
Yeah. It's an ever building. So we talk about LinkedIn a lot with our kids, because to me, it's one of the greatest professional networking tools, maybe the greatest that's ever been created. But and you're very active on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. If a student is reaching out to Katie Bayne on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
what gets your attention that would maybe provoke you to respond or reach back out? What give our students those tips, because we're learning a lot about these tricks of the trade from some of the best. But what gets your attention?
Well, I think about it. I'm just like them, with my
Spot on.
business.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone I meet, whether it's a Guggenheim client or a different person at Guggenheim, or one of my clients for Bayne Advisors, I spend a lot of time doing research. Like Vince, for today, I know that, you just did a podcast this week, you personally, Rich Take on Sports. I
Mm-hmm.
listened to it. I know
Mm-hmm.
what your book's about. I know that you've had 15 people do these podcasts. I listened to a few. I understood what they were talking about, so I got a handle on that. I know that 3 of the things you said last week were that the things that motivate you are taking care of your family, doing the best work in the world, and pivoting the business. I
Mm-hmm.
know that you are very interested in using this time. The change that's required for Melt is inevitable, that the growth for Melt is optional, that you're choosing wisely to go there. So my long answer is, there on LinkedIn, as someone comes to me, there's a lot of information about what I did last week, who I'm working with, things I've said, articles that have been written that are about how I feel about things. Now, if someone just sends a note and says, "Hi, This is me. I would like to know you. I'm like, well, why? What is
Hmm.
it about what I'm doing that would make this connection that's great for both of us? Because as you know, there is limited time, but the
Hmm.
amount of research I do, and I know, you know me, I walk in literally into any meeting with a full understanding of the company. I've listened to all of the investor calls. I've listened to everything that person has written, everything that's publicly available. I have
Hmm.
tried to read and list so that the questions I ask them are directly in line with the things that I've understood are important. I don't assume that I know everything. I say, it looks like from this specific thing that I saw, this is important. I think I could help you with this. Or can you tell me more about the sentence that was in this thing you wrote on or said on this podcast? So all I can say is on LinkedIn and making those connections, make sure you don't just look at their resume. You go and do the research online, find out what they're passionate about. It could be something completely different. Like people know I was part of the Atlanta Women's Foundation, that I guest lecture at both SMU and Duke, that I spent a
Hmm.
lot of time. I'm on the boards of both of those, that I'm on the board of the Honest Company, and I believe in pure baby, pure beauty, and not sacrificing effectiveness for naturalness. All of these are things that I've talked about that you can see if you look deeper than just the words on the page. And so my thing would be, make sure that lead in headline on your LinkedIn says something about you and what you want to do. And then
Hmm.
also that you, as you make contact with people like Vince Thompson, you understand that on, Rich's podcast, that he said failure is a failure to try. And I believe that, and this is my failure. And now I want to do that. However it is that you're connecting more deeply than just, hi, Vince has a sports marketing agency. I think I want to be in sports marketing. And
Yeah, and you just spot on because you've just reinforced everything that we've been learning this summer is that do your research, do your homework. Every interaction with Katie Bayne is a potential or audition for a potential opportunity, and that's what I'm trying to drill into the kids this summer is that every interaction is a potential audition, and you do the same thing, I do the same thing, and they're doing the same thing. And if busy people like you and I have the time to do the research and the homework, make that emotional connection. Hey, Miss Bayne, I see that you went to Duke. Go Blue Devils. I really want to learn more about your career at Coca-Cola because we've been talking about, obviously careers at Coca-Cola and brand management and those types of things. And so what you just said was a tremendous reinforcement of what we've been saying all summer. And so I want to pivot to a fun story. Had tremendous career at Coca-Cola, interacting with the highest business people and highest quote unquote celebrities in the world. LeBron James, Ryan Seacrest doing television commercials for the Super Bowl. But out of all of that, who's your favorite? Because we're learning a lot about. We had a podcast with Charles Zislin that just came out today, and he was talking about his famous encounter with Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters and CeeLo and all that. But tell us a fun story from your career because you've got thousands of
Oh my goodness, Vince. Yeah, so many. You want to talk about a more of a athlete or entertainers type story? Is that what you?
them. No, it's something that just really like just. I mean, you've been such a part of driving culture for many decades.
Yeah,
Just something or somebody
yeah,
because one of my two of my favorites are always LeBron. Back when
yeah,
we all signed him back in '02 and '03, and then obviously working with Ryan Seacrest. But those are just a couple of my anecdotes. But you've worked with hundreds and
yeah,
thousands of them. But so who stands out?
yeah. I think. Well, I can give you a couple. Uh, I think probably one that really stands out was when we signed Taylor Swift.
Mm-hmm.
We were working on, we were really working hard on Diet Coke at the time. And I came across
When
personally,
was when? By the way, when was this? When was this?
gosh, it must have been,
Oh 08, oh 09, 10,
yeah,
11?
it was about, yeah, 2000, I want to say 10 or 11. I'd have
Mm-hmm.
to look at the dates on
Mm-hmm.
on the
So she was still sort of in her emergence phase.
She was coming up, and
Mhm.
you and I actually met her at an NCAA thing. She did a
Oh yeah.
warm up in San Antonio one year.
In '08, she
Yes,
opened for three doors down at
yes.
16.
So I met her and her mom then. She literally, I think, almost had just had her braces taken off. I mean, she was so young.
She
And
literally
then,
asked me and you, "Hey, do you think I can meet three doors down?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? This lady's about to be the next world superstar."
so fast forward 4 or 5, yeah, it was about 2012 or 13 when I signed her, I believe, maybe even 14. And so
Hmm.
I had watched her, and I had been looking at all of the things she did, again, doing the research, and I came across, it was an interview she did for something like Bon Appetit, which is a food magazine that's
Hmm.
also online. And she was talking about her favorite things to eat and drink. And she had fried chicken, um, Diet Coke, and cinnamon rolls were like her three. And I cut it out of it was in the magazine.
Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think I saw it at the doctor's office. Cut it out. And I brought it into work and I said, look at this. I said, this is the kind of person, and because I have learned you only associate and partner brands with other people who believe in your brands. There's no such
Authenticity, authenticity.
no such thing as a fake relationship. Well, we went forward and started opening, and then I did a lot of work to understand how Taylor actually talked about Diet Coke. She talked about it all the time. She drinks it every day, and she drinks it especially before she goes on stage. And so those are always the best kind of, as you said,
Sure.
authentic relationships. And so we did a lot of work to understand it. We started talking to her at her, I think you know enough, and you know it, her father is her business manager.
Hmm.
Her manager is her basically like her uncle, and he's not really, but that's kind of how
That's a family operation. Yeah.
it
Yep.
is. And one of the most fun stories was the night we were signing her, and I'd signed a lot of talent. I had put my name on the paper, and usually that's done in a boardroom or in a manager's fancy, office, or wherever the athlete is or entertainer is performing
Hmm.
or playing a game. And Vince, do you remember where I told you where I flew in to sign her contract, a 4-year large contract to be a partner mostly on social media, which is a brand new thing for us at the time,
Right.
was to sign an artist because that's how Taylor communicates. She's an amazing
Yeah.
social
Massive
media
following.
presence, and she has a huge following, and she only talks about things she loves, like kids, her relationship with
Hmm.
them, and us. And she scheduled the meeting. She asked me to fly to Nashville. I
Hmm.
went to her home. Her mother cooked dinner.
Wow.
Her brother came over, and we sat around a table of 8 people eating food her mother had made, and Taylor sat there with us.
Probably fried chicken.
Yep, and we had dinner together at her home, and I have the photos of signing the contract in her dining room in her Nashville house. And it wasn't her house; it was her parents' house, actually.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
she was living at home, and so that's one of the most. And it's exactly who she is. She is an authentic, great entertainer with unbelievable talent. But it's probably one of my favorite stories. I had never signed a contract with someone on someone's dining room table
Hmm.
with their mother serving you chicken from a plate that she spent all afternoon cooking. So
Well, and one thing we talk to our students about is that as big as these celebrities are, they're still people as well, and they still have needs and emotions and good days and bad days, and so. And I think you probably could write a book on, like I said, with all the people that you've dealt with. So, sort of as we close out, share with our students some of your go-to sources of information, your maybe podcasts that you may listen to, books, business advice, anything, any nuggets that you can share with them as a resource. They have time because we're all going through the COVID right now. But what are some of your go-to resources that you would recommend that they engage with?
yeah, I think the most important thing is to have a variety of good ones that are in your field. And so for me, Adweek, Ad Age, The Drum are read every single day. As I sit,
There's one called the Drum, students. We haven't brought that out yet, and I'm glad she brought that out. The Drum is a great, great resource.
and you get to know the reporters and how they write. You can't take everything they say as gospel, but it gives you a broad view of marketing strategy across a lot of industries, and you see how things are interpreted. So that's one piece. Second, I would say I have Bloomberg on my television as I work in the background every day. And the reason why, and then I turn it up and down depending who the guests are or where the market is and what's going on. And I'm watching because shareholders and shareholder activity against industries moves faster now than ever before. And
Yep.
all of these companies are in business. Their role is to add values to the shareholders and the communities they serve. And I find that by listening through that all day, and then finally at the end of the day, getting a global view of what's happening each day, not just in the US. So watching some nightly news sources that are in line either with your beliefs or even better, objective. Watch a bunch. Don't take anyone's word as gospel, but staying aware and informed and listening carefully for what's going on, either through the podcast you're watching, through the and anything. I personally I'm doing a lot of walking. I'm listening to Oprah soul searching conversations. I mean that's
Oprah. You said Oprah Soul Searching.
yeah, so
Yeah,
awesome.
that's a good
Yeah.
one. So,
So
and that's what we keep saying is that all this information is at fingertips. And so, parting shot, like I said, I love to say, change is inevitable, growth is optional. We're all living through this now. Choose wisely. Any parting sayings or words of wisdom that I mean, we've heard some great ones that you sort of live by as your credo.
yeah, I think and like I said, you and I are interviewing for jobs every day. You and I, as we build our businesses, as we meet new clients, as we meet new client needs. So that research part and being because I do research not just to get the job. I do research out of respect because I
Bingo.
respect that people are spending time with me and are open to having a conversation. So I do research number one out of respect. Second, keep your brand clear and your social platforms consistent so that as you meet, if you've done your research and you meet, make sure that you're delivering on that. I do that as head of Bayne Advisors. I think about what I'm bringing to the party and I think about my own social footprint. Third, on as you look at jobs, don't get stuck on one company. There's a lot of people doing really interesting things. So even though you thought you always wanted to, work for, whatever, Nike, there are a lot of other companies that might do work like them, or you really wanted to work at Melt. There are other companies that Vince might know someone at, and so that leads to the final one, which is network, network, network. All of
Yeah.
my work now comes from people who have worked with me before or have heard from someone who says, Katie would really be able to help you with this. That's how it happens for me. It's how the door opens. Then the research starts, then the meeting of the minds on a problem. And then I stay true to what I promised to deliver.
Well, and you just hit the nail on the head when you say network. That's and this is great. Like I love the equating research to respect. So if somebody's you're honoring them by saying, hey, you're important enough to me. This opportunity is important enough that I'm going to show you. One of my pet peeves is I get these innocuous emails that says, hey, I'm Joe Smith and attaches my resume and I need to make X dollar a year. Well, I immediately flushed that. I'm like, you didn't put any effort. You just flunked your audition to me. So
Yeah.
show that respect, show that effort. I love the clarity of the brand. Keep your brand clear. I think I love keeping options open. Don't get stuck on one. But this networking thing is and building relationships and the value of maintaining and always nurturing those relationships. I mean, I think this has been. I mean, we could talk all day. It's been what an amazing hour. And I think to our students and our listeners and Katie, we've got a lot of people that even aren't even students now beginning to listen to the podcast just to hear great words of wisdom and advice from the great ones in the country. And so, as students, I think you can see that, why, Katie Bayne is one of my favorite people in the world, professionally, personally. I think you hear the passion in her voice. I think you hear the attitude in her voice. I think, if you want to follow somebody, you want to network with somebody, but, Katie Bayne, founder and president of Bayne Advisors, senior advisor to Guggenheim, serves on many boards, including the Honest Company with Jessica Alba, amazing 30 plus year run at the Coca-Cola Company, great education with Duke University, also an amazing family, amazing mother. Students out there, if you're really looking to achieve work-life balance and the values and important, I think Katie Bayne is probably somebody you're going to want to follow for a long, long time. So, Katie, we thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your advice. I think you're going to hear a lot of feedback from our students after they come back for the 4th of July. So we're certainly honored that you would be a part of Summer 2020 Virtual Melt University, and we roll on. And thank you, Katie Bayne.
Thanks, Vinny. It's been an honor. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Vince. Hope you enjoyed today's virtual class. We'll be back soon with another edition of Melt University 2020.